Hello and welcome to Thinking Boldly. This is the podcast of the Consilium Institute. I am Judge Julie Field, and I am here with the co-founder of the Consilium Institute, Heidi Webb, and we are thrilled today to have a conversation with Oona Metz. So, Oona, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, I'm so pleased to be here. So thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And I'd love to just let the world know a little bit about you before we start our conversation. So Oona Metz is a psychotherapist, writer, and speaker who specializes in treating women navigating divorce. With over 30 years of experience, Oona has seen hundreds of women through the process of divorce. She is the founder of the Beacon Group Fellowship, which trains mental health clinicians throughout the country to lead divorce support groups. Her brand new book, which will be out this week, January 13th, is Unhitched, the Essential Divorce Guide for Women. So, Oona, thank you so much for letting us be one of the first people to have a conversation with you on your book launch week. So thank you for being part of Consilium and being part of this conversation today.
Well, it's great to be here. I love being part of Consilium. I feel like our values are so aligned in terms of really helping to reduce shame and stigma about divorce and really looking ahead to trying to figure out some good outcomes for divorce. So it's been a real pleasure being part of Consilium.
Well, I must say, as I sit here, I feel like it's this full circle moment where I've known you, Una, for a very long time
Yeah.
before Consilium even was Consilium, but it was just
Yep.
sort of like a concept. And
hmm
you've been doing such great work for so long, and to see it culminate in this book and in the groups you've created and the national organization is just incredibly gratifying. And I just know you've shepherded so many people through such difficult and rough terrain. I guess what I'm wondering as I sit here and sort of am having this conversation with you, that's sort of like what's old is new again, is what started you in this field in the first place? What got you started in the field of divorce?
Well, I've been a therapist for 30 years, and I have always been a group therapist as well. So I've run support groups. And when I went through my own divorce nearly 2 decades ago, I really wished I had a support group to go to, and no such support group existed. And so this little seed got planted in my mind, and I thought, when I get enough distance from my divorce, I think also I'll see if I want to start a support group. And so a few years later, I did, and it filled up immediately, and started two more, and all three of those groups now have been running for 15 years
Wow.
on a weekly basis in person. So, it's been and they're one of my favorite hours of the week, so it's
When
been
you say
really
they've been running for 15 years, not with the same people
not with
entirely,
the
but,
same
like,
people.
how long
Nope,
do
the
people
people
tend to stay?
I would say the minimum is about 6 months, and the maximum I've had people stay for 3 years. Kind of depends how long their divorce takes, um, and how much support they need along the way, and each person gets to decide how long they wanna stay as they go along, and, um and then when they leave, it makes room for a new person to come. So, yes, not the same people for 15 years, but the
Yeah.
same time, the same
Mhm.
place, the same
Yeah,
station for
yeah,
15 years, the same
feels
leader.
familiar every week, I'm sure, to you.
Yes, yes,
But
yes.
when you have a group that sort of evolves like that, people start and people stay for,
Mhm,
some
mhm,
long periods of time and know each other well, I would think, and then leave. Like, how does
yes.
that alter how many people are in the group? How does it alter the feel of the group? What kinds of
Mhm.
evolutions do you typically notice sort of in groups?
Um, One of the things that I think is really useful in my groups is that people are at different stages of divorce, and so the people who are further ahead can really offer hope to the people who are just starting out. And for the people who come who are starting out, that's a useful perspective too for the people who are further along, because they can look at the people who are kind of newer to the process and think, wow, I remember when I was back in that place. And the groups really are primarily about providing emotional support. Um, but certainly people, also trade kind of legal and financial tips as well. And
Mm.
I'm not an attorney and I'm not a financial person, so I don't offer legal or financial advice, but I might say, this might be something you want to ask your attorney about, or this
Yeah.
might be something you
Uh,
want to ask your financial person about. Yeah.
Sure. And as an attorney, I know there are so many junctures, just along the way where you feel that's not your role either to be
Right.
the emotional support person and working collaboratively that way, which of course is so much of what Consilium is about, is just, really can alter the journey for someone in profound ways because there are
Hmm.
so many aspects of divorce, as you know, that just, it's not about what happens in the courtroom. It's
Right.
all the
Right.
sort of other social, emotional divorces that are happening simultaneously alongside the legal divorce process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's where I'm really stepping in to try to provide a really needed service to women who are really, going through the emotional piece of divorce.
mhm.
Yeah.
So is it different than when you say it's a support group? Is that different than group therapy? As someone who's never done either, I guess I'm
Mhm.
just curious, is there a difference? What does it look like? What can one expect if they come into a group, one of your divorce groups, for example?
Hmm. Hmm. So the support group is a form of group therapy. There's all different kinds of group therapy. In a support group, it's more that people are kind of dealing with the same kind of thing. So this a support group could be for grief or for um, parenting or for divorce, whereas a true therapy group might have different people coming in for different reasons. And I think what people can expect is certainly um, in my group a therapist who's well trained. I have a five years of group training under my belt originally way back when, and then I'm keep very active in the group therapy world. People can expect confidentiality. People introduce themselves by first names only, which really helps with that. And they also sign an agreement that they'll keep confidentiality. And they can really expect a tremendous amount of connection. Because I think that people going through divorce often feel so isolated. They often come
Right.
to me and they say, how is it possible that half of marriages are ending in divorce and I don't know anyone going through one? And
Wow.
so they can really, I think they feel so isolated. And even if they have very well meaning friends and family who want to support them, um, sometimes they feel like those people don't quite get it. And so they feel very relieved to be in a group of other people who really understand some of the nuances of the emotional part of divorce.
Yeah. Um, am I right in thinking your groups are in person or are any of them
Yes, they are.
oh, are
So my groups are in person, and some of the people that I've trained in the Beacon Group Fellowship, which is a training program to learn how to learn my model of divorce groups, are leading um, ones online.
great. Okay, well, maybe
Yeah.
you can tell us a little bit more about specifics of that later. But, back to the groups themselves, like, are there things that you pinpoint as making them particularly effective? Like, kinds of, dynamics that develop? I know you've talked about sort of the general emotional support, but are there specific sort of alliances that you see develop, or is the anonymity part of what makes it, like, what I guess I'm just trying to
Mm.
understand, like, how you
I mean, there's confidentiality, but there's also very, very deep connection and in a very non-judgmental space. So I really hold this idea that everybody has their own unique marriage and their own unique divorce. But what connects people is what the feelings are. And I also really believe that everybody's doing the best they can and everybody's going to go through it in their own way. And I really try to make sure that that is part of the culture of the group. But I think women come into the group and can immediately sense what a safe place it is. And so they're very vulnerable very quickly. And that really creates some incredible connection and intimacy, emotional intimacy in the group. So people talk about things that they may have never talked about before that happened in their marriage or that's happening in their divorce. Um, and it's really a safe place for them to come and kind of do that work.
Mhm.
Mm. I don't know if you keep, I don't know how to say tabs or information or track of
Mhm.
sort of when people leave.
Afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Do people maintain
Mhm.
those friendships, or is it like, "That was a time in my life and now I'm done?" Like, what?
No, when people are part of the group, I really ask that they not have contact and not become friends while they're in the group because I really want everybody to be on the same exact level playing field. And
Mm,
if
Huh.
people walk out of my office and three people are going out to lunch and the other people aren't invited or they are invited but they can't go because they've got to get back to work or get back to their kids, it can create kind of these dynamics in the group
Mhm.
that are not helpful. And so during the time they're in the group, I really ask that they do not have friendships outside. But once they leave, they do give their contact information. And I know that people have made lifelong friends from being in the group. And people need community when they're going through a divorce. I can't tell you, it warms my heart so much. Like, every few months I'll get a text from some group of women who have been in my group, from last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And they'll say, "Hi, here we all are. We all went out to Mother's Day brunch again," or "Here we are on the beach," or "Here we are with, a group member's new baby," or whatever it is. So I know that they do. A lot of them do really keep in touch. And
Mhm.
it makes me so happy to know that that's happening.
yeah. Yeah, no, I would think so. I mean, community in every sphere is so important,
Yes,
and I think
so important,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
right.
So you really focus on women in your work and women, and has that always been the case? Has it always been your focus?
It really has. I started out working with adolescent girls in the earlier part of my career, and then transitioned to providing women's groups for women that were before the divorce groups, just more general. And I just really love the way that women are so easily able to connect and share. And so it's not that I have anything against men, but it's just kind of the way my practice has evolved. I do have one guy in my practice, my one guy. Um, but mostly it's women. Yeah.
Mhm. And the groups
And
are designed for women.
yeah, yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I think marriage is different for many people, for men and women. Marriage is a different experience, and then divorce is oftentimes too. And I think, there's great things that can happen in a co-ed group too. A lot of the women who come to my group would not come if it was co-ed. They say they
Yeah.
really want to
Mm.
be in a space with other women.
Mhm.
So,
Is that you're thinking in terms of emotional safety, physical safety, all of it, and people who have been leaving
mostly
difficult.
emotional safety, but yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So you wrote a book about all of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
congratulations first on
Thank
that.
you.
And when you were writing it, were there any special considerations that you took into account as you were, sort of formulating how to bring this out into the world at large?
Mhm. Yeah, it was interesting because I had never written a book before. It's my first book, and I actually hadn't ever published anything before. And now I have published, quite a few essays.
Mm.
But when I was thinking
Look,
about
I
the
think of
book,
you as so prolific. That's amazing that you hadn't.
yeah, yeah, it all started with the book. So when I was thinking about the book, one of the things that I really had to think about quite a bit was because I had all the information in my head. I knew I just needed to get it onto the page, but I worked with this really wonderful writing coach named Katie Bannon, and she really helped me to think about the reader. Like it's not enough to just have the the writer write down all the information, but you have to structure it in such a way so that the reader can read it. And one of the things I knew from working with women going through divorce is that a lot of times it's hard for women to read when they're going through something very
Mm.
stressful.
Mhm.
And it's especially hard to read dense text. And so we were very conscious of writing the book in a way that made it easy and accessible to read. So it's packed full of information, but I really was very conscious of trying to make certain bullet points or really structure in a way where you get a little bit of information and then you might read a vignette about
Mhm.
somebody who went through exactly the information that I just gave you. And then there might be
Mhm.
an exercise, and the exercise is a way of kind of reflecting on your own experience.
Mm.
So I really tried to make it so that the other thing I tried to do is make it so that it's really good for people of any stage of divorce. So if you're just thinking about divorce, or if you're like right in the middle, or even if you've already divorced, um, there's something in there for everybody, and it's not a book where you have to start at page 1 and read it all the way through to the end. It's really a book that you can pick up and go to chapter 7 if you're worried about your kids, or or say you want to date, you've already divorced, but you're looking at dating. You can go right to the end and read about dating. Or you're thinking about divorce and you're thinking, how am I going to tell my spouse? You can start at the
Mm.
beginning.
Mhm.
And then the other consideration I really made in terms of the book was making sure that we had an audiobook version as well.
Say. Yeah.
Both because sometimes the way that people take in information, some people like to read on paper, some people like to read on computer or Kindle, and some people really prefer
Audio.
listening.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it's also a safety issue. So I think if somebody's
Right.
considering divorce, they may not want to put a book about divorce on their nightstand, right?
Mhm.
Or be
Mhm.
reading it on the subway, or have it, in the car when they're waiting to pick up their kids. They might
Mhm.
really want to have it in their ears. And so
Yeah.
there's the audiobook version too.
So I gotta ask, did you record it?
I did. I did.
Oh,
Yes.
Been a fun
congratulations. That's
journey.
It
Yeah.
great.
was very, very important to me that it was in my voice. I just
Mhm.
wanted to be the one who was, in your ear as you were
Yeah.
listening
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
So
No, that
yeah, yeah, I went to New York and spent a week recording it, 4 days, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know in your process, you outline sort of a 5-phase model of divorce, grief, or
Grief.
going
Yeah.
through sort of the divorce grief. Can you talk a little bit about those phases and that model?
Yeah. Um, Well, while I was writing the book, I got to a chapter where I really wanted to outline, kind of to give people a map, really, for the journey of divorce and grief. And so I looked at all the literature, and it just felt like those models weren't making sense to me. Um, and they were okay, but they didn't quite fit. And so I really thought about the hundreds of women that I've seen. I thought about my own experience, and that's how I kind of came up with this model. And so like other models, phase models, or stage models of grief, it's not that somebody starts at 1 and goes exactly through the number 2, number 3, number 4, and never goes back and forth. Some people skip a phase, some people go back and forth. But basically, I think the first stage always begins with heartbreak, and I think that's true whether it's you initiate the divorce or not. Um, if your spouse is initiating the divorce, it's heartbreak for sure and can be a really big one. But if you're the one initiating divorce, you only do it after a series of heartbreaks, right? Like nobody kind of has a great marriage and then thinks, well, I think I'll get divorced, right? Because nobody wants to get divorced. So I think that's where it begins is with heartbreak.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you use that word actually, because I think that, being lawyers or Julie being a judge, and, it's like that's, it's harsh and soft language at the same time. It's not legal
Mm.
language, it's
Right.
emotional language.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
think that matters so much. And I think that,
Yeah.
I've always described it as sort of like the fracture of a dream. Like
Yeah.
not that you're living a
Right.
dream, but you have an idea
Yes.
when you get married of what your marriage will be
Yes.
Mhm.
when that's
It does
fractured.
not include divorce.
It does not
Right.
include divorce.
Generally not. Nope.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
pretty rare. I have talked to a couple people who said, "I knew as I was walking down the aisle."
Right, right, that's true.
A really bad.
But they were still hopeful they were gonna be able to
Right. They were
sit
they
right.
were hopeful because they made it the rest of the
Yeah,
way down the aisle and didn't turn
right,
around halfway, right?
right,
There was
right.
that spark of whatever that gave them hope enough, to
Yeah.
follow through and for long enough to stay in it until it didn't work.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I think that I'm curious if the other, names that you've given phases are as emotionally resonant as
Mhm,
heartbreak,
mhm,
'cause to me, that's really a
mhm.
strong word.
Right, right. Well, we're talking about the phases of grief, right? So, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, I think the second phase is really the roller coaster. And that came directly from my clients because they talk about the roller coaster of feelings all the time. And I think that's a phase where people are feeling everything. It's kind of after that initial heartbreak, and people are, of course, are still feeling heartbreak, but that roller coaster of feelings where you're feeling angry and sad and fearful and maybe a little relieved, but, and oftentimes all at the same time, right? Oftentimes in the
Yeah,
same day or the same hour or the same moment. Um, and one of the things I really wanted to communicate is how normal that is, how appropriate it is. Like, of course, you're going to feel a ton. And also how temporary it is that you're not going to feel this much forever, right? Like,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show that there's like a map here. There are different stages, and this is one stage, but the stage doesn't last forever.
yeah, that's powerful as well. I think
Mhm.
just the
Mhm.
idea of, you do eventually get off the roller coaster.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Although, as I like to say, unlike a real roller coaster, nobody says, "Oh my god, I want to do that again." Right?
True
Good point.
that, true that.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
So, and, unfortunately, I do think sometimes the legal process, can exacerbate the roller coaster, if people are, you know, going to court or their court dates are being moved or, they don't have, attorneys that are trained in the Consilium method or, things
Right?
like that. So it can
Yeah.
be really, really hard. Yeah. Yeah. I think after roller coaster comes mending. And the way I like to picture it is like taking a little needle and thread and mending up the little holes in your heart or the little scrapes
Mm,
and bruises of your heart. It's really a
Nice.
time where people begin to, there's so much focus, I think, on your ex and on the divorce during the divorce. And in mending, you can shift the focus back to yourself a little bit and figure out what you need and what you want. Um, so that you're beginning to it's the beginning of a shift in focus. There's
Nice.
so much focus, during a divorce
mm,
on the legal process, the financial process, the ex, what's the ex doing, what their ex is
Mhm.
not doing, so on and so forth. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
And then I think after mending comes letting go, which is an important part of the grieving process. And I think sometimes where people get stuck in grief is they're not able to let go. And there's so much to let go of in a divorce, right? You're letting go of your, view of the future. You're letting go of your identity as being a married person or your identity of being part of an intact family. Um, you have to let go of your spouse's narrative of what happened in your marriage and your divorce, which can be a tough one for people. But there's a lot to let go of, and that's an important step.
Mhm. And then what's the final step?
The final stage, I think, is moving on, and it's not
Mhm.
that the divorce isn't always going to be part of you. It will always be part of who you are and part of your history. But I think in moving on is a time where people begin to invest their energy and their time in other things, that aren't the divorce. Like I sometimes will say, going through a divorce is like having a really horrible part time job where you don't even get paid. You have to pay to go to your job. You have terrible bosses. You have terrible colleagues,
Mhm.
and
And no
when
control over
and no
things.
control, you have no days off, right? And
Mhm.
so when you retire from that job, when you quit that job, you can finally. That takes a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
Mhm.
now you know you have that energy and you can invest in something new. So
Mhm.
that's, I think, where the moving on process is.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm having the image, I'm sure you've talked or known of it, but the Japanese pottery, con
Yes.
that sort of when you're talking about
Yes.
mending, I was sort of thinking that, but, like, it's the mending, the letting go, and the sort of moving on, like, you have that thing at the end where, you know
Hmm.
it's, in the words
It's
of
a
Leonard
beautiful
Cohen,
piece of,
it's like a cracked
yes.
it's a cracked vessel, but it's
Yes.
better for
Yes.
where it's been.
Mhm.
But
Heidi, it's like you've read my book. That's in the last part of my book. I talk about that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
well, I've ordered
That
your
and the
book, so
other
I've almost read it.
yeah, the other, that's right. The other metaphor I like to use is one of sea glass, and how sea glass kind of starts out as like
Oh, yeah.
kind of a piece of trash, right? A sharp,
Mm, with sharp
some
edges
with
and
sharp
yeah.
edges, but it goes through this whole process of going in the sand and the ocean and
Yeah.
getting kind of
Yeah, yeah, I
worn
love
down, and then it becomes this really beautiful
Great.
thing that people wanna collect, right?
yeah,
People look for and
Mhm.
collect and feel lucky when
yeah.
they find one.
Sure,
So,
sure, it's deepened
because I
and
do think that
yeah.
divorce is it provides opportunities for incredible transformation and growth and healing.
So, you've got so much going on, and I know you have a lot of events coming up. Are there any you wanna tell us about?
Oh, sure. So we're going to have a book signing at Belmont Bookstore on January 11th, and then I'll be in New York at P&T Knitwear on January 14th. There's a couple of online events as well that are all listed on my website, which is unametz.com. And then we also, for people who are in Boston, have a great event coming up on February 11th at City Space, which is the
Fun.
WQR space,
Good,
um,
be there.
with
Fun.
good, 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 with Scotchy Cool, who wrote a memoir called Sucker Punch, a divorce memoir. She's very cool. And Nicole Grave Lipson, who has a wonderful book called Mothers and Other Characters. And Tiziana Deering will be the moderator. So, really
Nice.
looking forward to that too.
Oh, that sounds
Um,
great.
yeah, yeah,
Yay,
yeah.
yay. That's
Yeah.
So
exciting.
Will that be broadcast, do you know, for those of us who are not
I
No?
I
Hmm.
don't think they
Oh,
broadcast that
okay.
particular one,
That's
but
too bad.
it could be a nice time for you to come to Boston.
Well, it
It's always a nice time for me to come to Boston. It's also a very nice time for you all to come to
Mhm.
Colorado.
To
So,
Colorado,
Una,
true.
I would love to get you
Yes,
in speaking engagements, bookstores in Denver
would
and Fort
love that.
Collins, in Boulder,
Boulder,
Colorado
would love
Springs. We
that.
would love to see you on the Front Range.
Yes, let's do that.
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely. So you were talking about some divorce memoirs. I think, it's interesting that it seems like we're in a span of time right now where people are talking a lot about their divorce journeys and,
Mhm.
beginning to end and where that transformation that you've been talking about. Are there any that you've read that particularly speak to you?
Oh, there's so many. I absolutely love that Maggie Smith. I feel like Maggie Smith kinda of this era, she was the one who kind of opened the door and allowed everybody else to come through. She has a great book called You Could Make This Place Beautiful,
It's such an
which is
amazing book.
just
Yeah.
beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Florence Williams has a great book called Heartbreak, which is kind of a combination. It's like a divorce memoir, but she's a bit of a scientist, and so she kind of
Huh.
goes
Mm.
into the science of heartbreak, which is really great.
Wow.
Um,
Like the
yeah,
physiology as well as
yeah,
the
yeah,
emotional piece. Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And then my friend Heather Sweeney has a new book called Camouflage. It's about her marriage and divorce, being married to a military man, which is really a great
Huh.
Oh,
new book that
Wow. What's
just
that
came
called
out.
again, Una?
It's called Camouflage. and it has a bright red cover.
Oh,
Uh-huh. 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 Her favorite color. So, she's
Wow.
fantastic. Yeah. And, Kelly McMasters wrote The Leaving Season, which is also another one I
Yes.
love.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of them out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
mostly written by women, interestingly, these days.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
They really are. I mean, I think, I mean, you tell us, but it seems that women are more willing to be introspective and insightful into what they're thinking, where they're at, what their transformation is going to look like. So is that your experience as well? Is that your
That has
observation?
been. Yeah, that has been my experience,
Mm.
and I think that also, women are the biggest readers. Women are the ones who buy
Uh,
books the most. I think it's something like, I can't remember, 70 to 80% of books are bought by women, and so there's a market out there too. But I
you're
think
right.
there's a
That
lot of
makes
people
sense.
talking about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
and it's cathartic to write. I mean, I for a lot of
Yeah,
people, I
for a
think.
lot of
Hmm.
people. Yeah.
Stimulating.
Yeah. Yeah. S So who inspires you? You're inspiring me today, but who inspires you?
Besides you 2? You're
We'll take
changing
it.
you're changing the conversation around divorce, which I think is so important, you know? And I think young people inspire me, you know? I think there's we kind of talk a lot about having mentors, and people think that mentors should be people who are older than you, but uh, right now all my mentors are younger than me because I feel like there's so much, they've got their hand on the pulse, their finger on the pulse of what's going on. So
Yeah.
that's who's inspiring me these days, is these kids who are
Mhm.
doing all kinds of new things and teaching me about my own technology and, you can relate,
Yeah,
right? You can relate.
right.
Can I ever?
Absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So your book again, tell us the title again, tell us where we can get it, tell us,
Mhm.
when it comes out, January
Yeah,
13th, for
that's right.
sure, and
That's right. It's available for pre-order now if you want it to arrive
okay.
on your doorstep on the 13th. And it's available everywhere. It's available at Amazon, at Target, at Barnes and Noble, and hopefully you'll get it from your local bookstore. Let's all support our independent bookstores as much as we can. They are important places and they need our support. And I know you can go to any independent bookstore and order it, and they will ship it to you. If you want a
Mhm.
signed copy, you could come to Boston to one of the events, or if you're not in Boston, you can go to Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Massachusetts. Will have signed copies that they'll send to you.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Fantastic. So, Unhitched, the Essential Divorce Guide for Women.
yeah.
So look for Una's book everywhere that you buy books, particularly those local bookstores. And unametz.com is your website, right?
Yep, and I have a lot of free resources on the website. A lot of times you have to put in your email or something to get resources, but on my website, lots of articles, podcasts, and resources. So,
If your support group's full right now, which it often is, but if people want to contact you and join a support group or one of
yeah,
the people you've trained, how do they go about that?
just go to the website. There's a contact page. I'm happy to talk to people, and yeah, we'll get you in as soon as we can.
Fantastic. Great. It's such a delight always to talk to you, but this was a really
Oh,
fun conversation.
oh, I love talking to you guys both.
Yeah. Yeah. Una, thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing for the world and for women who are experiencing heartbreak and roller coaster and taking the steps that they need to move on and the challenge of that. I'm so glad you're there. I'm so glad that you're training your Beacon Group fellows to be able to do what you do and sharing it all with the world in your new book. So, very excited to read it when it comes out. And we'd love to have you back another time to talk about how things are progressing, particularly with
Great.
the fellowship and all the things.
Great. Oh, well, I would love that. Anytime. Anytime.
Absolutely delightful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.